the way I envision it is that we have, from our side, you know, we have this world we experience, and this very much is the fallen world or the world of the archons, right? So we're stuck in this, the matrix. But there are times when you feel or see or sense something, well, beautiful or divine that shines through the universe or shines through phenomena. For me, I think probably it initially started with experiences of nature as a child, but also experiences of music, and then later of poetry, liturgy. So I think that's, but the thing is, we probably had that experience where, like Michael Hedges said about playing, composing songs for the guitar and using tunings, that there are those moments where the entire universe opens up, right? A new world opens up. And it opens up in the world that you had always observed, but had not seen this experience come through. Very often it's compared to falling in love, right? Where something radical breaks through the world. Radical and beautiful breaks through the world. And I think that's enormously important. And I think that not only is it enormously important, I think we have all experienced this, but we don't talk about it, right? Or we have been bred to think, oh, just nothing. That was nothing. This is the world, how it is. This is how it is. I just accept it. Just go along with it. But we have those experiences where we see something else. We see, another world. And sometimes that other world might be like the other world of myth, legend, fairies, green men. But I think that other world can also be the world that that could be. The world that could be. And we could say it's like seeing the unfallen world. And that's what Sophia, in a way you could say, is part of the regeneration of the world. So to see that, right, to have that revelation that can open up so much in the way of possibility, but also in the hope for a better world.
Even Orthodox Christianity has to acknowledge the way that it is in comparison to, say, Judaism, is somewhat Gnostic. And the difference is that unlike Gnosticism, we do not, or certain strands of Neoplatonism, we do not link embodiment to that Gnostic impulse.
And this is the distinction between the Christic and the Luciferic.
And because we don't link embodiment to that Gnostic impulse, that means that the view is not one of the material world itself being evil, but that it is on its own, it's not enough, and that it is a need of redemption through the Spirit.
The Christic does not reject the bodily. It is about the spiritualization of the bodily.
Dare I say it, for mystical, ontological union with the Son through the Spirit. Knowledge is a relationship between the knower and the known.
Knowledge is a relationship between the knower and the known.
Knowledge, yada, is intimate and erotic. The Blessed Mother says to the angel, I cannot be pregnant, for I have known no man. Adam knows Eve, and she bears him a child. It's an intimate and erotic relationship that bears new life.
And you love this as a pastor, I know, because it's that intimate facial communion that changes people.
Yep.
And part of my point, a big part of my point is knowing isn't just about other people. It's about birds and gardens and even ordinary dumb objects. It's about knowing them too. And I'm saying it needs to be person-like.
The language of mystical experience is a radically intimate language. It's no more transmissible than, say, trying to explain your love for your wife. You can put it in words, but you can't directly communicate it.
So is what you could call Christian Gnosticism, but it's not hypocritical churchianity. It is not what Christianity became once the Catholics and the emperor got a hold of it and stripped the gnosis out of the New Testament, threw it away, killed the people who truly believed in the God above all gods.
Gnosticism is probably the original schism between the Orthodox and those who couldn't be Orthodox for whatever reason.
This is one of my criticisms of modern popular Christianity, that there seems to be a kind of absence of awareness of the principle of finality in the order of grace.
Yep.
No,
I would agree with that.
I mean, you are one of the, and I'm not trying to flatter you here, because actually I think it's a real indictment. I think that the fact that I only know of perhaps one bishop in the church who is talking often about theosis, deification, transformation in Christ, the divine intimacy, the end for which the Christian life exists, the end for which baptism is given to us, which is spousal transformation in intimacy with Christ, which is kind of strange, because that's the whole scriptural narrative. It begins with a marriage. The covenant's renewed through marriages. Christ begins his ministry at the wedding at Cana with his miracle, and then he calls himself the bridegroom, and then he's on the cross and he says consummatum est. He consummates his marriage with the church, and then the whole thing culminates in this great wedding feast of the Lamb, and the whole thing is filled with this spousal imagery of we are being called through baptism and through the sacramental life into intimacy with the incarnate Word. And yet, since I became a Roman Catholic 15 years ago, almost nowhere have I heard this preached or discussed. It's kind of to become interested in the mystical tradition of the Church is almost treated as a kind of niche interest for some eccentric Christians, rather than the very heart of what Christianity is all about.
So it's not so surprising, really, that a lot of people reject the proposition as being uninteresting.
Right.
If it is shown of that fundamental dimension of significance.
The gnosis is gone unless you bring it in.
The divine is constantly reaching. There's always an infiltration, but you have to kind of meet it halfway. So I think that the idea of the angelic, the idea of this quality of intermission that happens.
I understand that people who do not identify with Christianity or identify with Jesus or identify with Christ, they only think of the hypocrisies and the pogroms and various negative things. That's what they see and that's what they think. They look at the worldly manifestation of the religion. But
what used to happen in the Old Testament all the time, and all of a sudden we come to this place, Nicene Creed, that the Spirit only shows up when we're all gathered under Constantine's edict, and that after that it can't happen ever again, I think is misleading. And when I go and I read the place where Jesus says, who do they say I am? And Peter jumps in and goes, you're the Son of the living God. And he goes, my Father gave that to you. On that, and then next thing he says, on this rock I shall build my church. But he's not, for me, reading that as my little mystic self that I am, it's that moment of divine, immediate intervention, revelation that the church is built on. That moment of absolute knowing that it's given by the divine, by God, in that moment that it's complete knowing. There's no belief necessary because he knows, I know who you are. You can't believe in who someone is. You have to know them to have an actual relationship with them. Otherwise, it's performance, right? It really depends on how you expect the creator and the anointed logos to act in terms of, there's actually an investment of grace that happens.
And I think people actually have those experiences all the time.
Yes,
the trouble is
so.
we haven't got or we've lost, or we've even willfully forgotten the conceptual framework to make sense of them.
Yes.
But I think any experience of beauty, of the gratuity of beauty, of being faced with something that exceeds me yet doesn't threaten to devour me, fills us with that sort of reverence which is intrinsic to humanity, I think. And I think one of the great sort of faith tasks of today, and one of the great spiritual tasks, is to re-equip people to make sense of that sort of experience.
Yes.
And so in order to bring those people back, we have to take what drew them away and incorporate it back into the narrative to have a fuller story that, includes all dispositions and every type of person, I think. They seem to have influenced the Templars for sure. And then they bled into all kinds of other occult movements that existed at the time, certain forms of Hermeticism and things like that. So Gnosticism immediately, it never really went away. It just saturated other things, which then became adversarial, opponents to Christianity. You can kind of see a Gnostic thread in Nietzsche, in Giordano Bruno. You can kind of see it in Luther. It's everywhere, and I think people today are, it's like a very extreme kind of Gnosticism that animates the modern world, where even, the crass idea of escapism, you're still trying to escape the material world in some way by playing video games or watching TV, or even getting drunk, taking drugs. We're constantly trying to escape materiality because we think something's wrong with it. And so even the culture of modernity is very Gnostic. It just doesn't call itself that. And so although Gnosticism tends to manifest in a very ugly form that is opposed to Christianity and to the culture that we've traditionally had, it seems to be that it contains necessary elements that have to be incorporated into our culture.